All right, so who doesn't love a good monster mystery, right? And today, we're tackling a big one. Maybe the biggest, the Loch Ness Monster. We're going deep on this one.
Deep is right. I mean, we're talking centuries of stories, photographs, sonar readings, even DNA analysis.
Mhm.
It's like trying to pin down a ghost.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating. But, before we get into all the Nessie sightings and evidence, we've got to talk about the loch itself, right? Loch Ness is basically a celebrity in its own right.
Oh, absolutely. It's not your average lake, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Imagine a lake so deep you could dunk the Eiffel Tower in it and still have room to spare. We're
Yeah.
talking 230 meters at its deepest point.
Mhm.
Carved out by glaciers eons ago, it's got these hidden depths, literally, that we're only just beginning to understand.
See, that's what gets me, that sense of massive scale. This huge body of water, so deep, so murky. It's like no wonder people have been seeing mysterious things in there for what, centuries now? I mean, there's that whole story about St. Columba back in the 6th century encountering a water beast.
Right. Although, whether that was in the loch itself or the River Ness is still up for debate. But it shows you how long these stories have been around. This idea of a creature in the water is woven into the very fabric of the place.
It's like primal, the fear of the unknown, of what lurks beneath the surface. Even today, with all our technology and stuff, a place like Loch Ness, it still feels undiscovered almost.
Oh, it definitely has that effect on people. And it's not just the monster either. You've got local legends, the Kelpie, for example, this shape-shifting water spirit, often taking the form of a horse, that lures people to a watery grave. Spooky stuff.
Okay, see, now that's enough to make anyone think twice about a dip in the loch. But it makes you wonder, right? Do these stories, these legends, influence what people think they're seeing? Is it our imaginations fueled by centuries of folklore, making us see monsters?
It's definitely a factor, no doubt. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns, to make sense of things. So, a log in the water, a weird wave, a trick of the light. Suddenly, it's a monster, especially when you're already primed to see one.
It's like seeing shapes in the clouds, except the clouds are, a very deep, very murky lake in this case.
And don't forget about that murky water. We're talking peat, tons of it. Staining the water, that dark, peaty brown, makes it incredibly difficult to see clearly. Imagine trying to solve a crime scene, but everything is shrouded in fog. That's Loch Ness.
The ultimate game of hide and seek. But it's not always just vague shapes, right? I mean, we've got those detailed accounts, like that guy Arthur Grant back in 34, who claimed he nearly crashed his motorcycle into a creature on the road. He even drew a picture of it.
Yeah, Grant's story is one of the more vivid ones, it's true. But we have to consider, it was the middle of the night, dimly lit road. Our senses can easily play tricks on us under those conditions.
True, true. Our brains can be pretty easily fooled. But still, it's interesting that he immediately described it as looking like a plesiosaur, which brings us to, arguably, the most famous piece of quote-unquote evidence we've got, the surgeon's photograph.
The surgeon's photograph, right. Yeah, this one's a classic. We're real mystery within a mystery. That grainy black and white photo everyone's seen, the long neck emerging from the water. For the longest time, it was like the piece of Nessie evidence.
Total OG Nessie pick, right?
Yeah.
Even had scientists fooled for a while there, didn't it? They even gave it a scientific name, went all out. Nesiderus rhombopteryx. Gotta
Oh,
love it.
it's true. They were convinced. Peter Scott, a well-respected naturalist, he was all in on this photo. Wanted to get Nessie on those endangered species list, give it official protection. That's how much weight this one photo carried.
And then, plot twist, the truth comes out, and it's like something out of a wacky tabloid, right? A toy submarine, a fake head and neck, all because someone wanted revenge on a newspaper.
Yeah. Turns out the monster was a cleverly disguised toy submarine. The guy behind it, he had beef with the Daily Mail for making fun of his earlier, also totally made up, Nessie discovery. So this is payback Nessie style.
Fake footprints and a fake monster photo. This guy was committed to the bit. But it shows you, though, right, how much this whole Nessie thing captures people's imaginations. People want it to be real bad.
Absolutely, the allure is undeniable. And the search for proof, it's taken many forms. And speaking of, the surgeon's photograph wasn't the only time someone tried to catch Nessie on film. There's that color film from 1938 shot by G.E. Taylor.
Oh, right, right. Whatever happened with that one? Did they ever figure out what was on it?
That's the thing. It's still kind of murky, pun intended. The film, it's not something that's been widely circulated. And the analysis done at the time by a guy named Maurice Burton, it wasn't exactly a home run. He basically said it was probably just some random floating object.
Bummer. Well, at least they tried. It's still cool, though, to see how far back this whole thing goes. But okay, let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked photos, but what about sonar? That's got to be more reliable, right?
Well, sonar in the mid-20th century, yeah, that really changed the game. Suddenly, we weren't just limited to what we could see on the surface, we could peer into the depths.
It's like those crime shows where they use that ground-penetrating radar to find buried bodies or whatever. Except
Hmm.
now it's like sound waves searching for a monster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they got some interesting readings, too. Back in '54, this fishing boat, they pick up a large object on their sonar, seemingly following them, deep down on the loch. Then in '67, a sonar expert sets up shop in Urquhart Bay, records multiple fast-moving targets.
Multiple. And moving fast. Okay, now we're talking. Did they ever figure out what those were about?
You know how it is with Nessie? Never straightforward. Sonar, it can be tricky to interpret. Those readings, they could have been anything, really. Schools of fish, underwater currents pushing debris around.
So frustrating. It's like Nessie's got this whole disappearing act down pat, but they didn't give up there. What was it, 87? They went all out with Operation Deep Scan, right? 24 boats, all sonar equipped. That's some serious commitment.
Yeah, Operation Deep Scan, that was huge. They were out to create this whole sonar map of
Mhm.
the loch, no stone unturned.
And what'd they find? Spill a tea. Did they finally find Nessie?
Well, they did find something. Something big, moving independently, not just going with the flow of the water. But just like those earlier readings, they couldn't say for sure what it was.
Ugh. Always with the cliffhangers. It's like this mystery just loves to keep us guessing. But surely with all the tech we have today, there has to be some answers out there.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
Well, entered the BBC in 2003. They went all in, even more advanced sonar, satellite tracking, the whole 9 yards. Loch Ness was wired, ready to catch Nessie in the act.
And drumroll, what happened? Did they finally find the elusive Nessie? Wait, really? They went to all that trouble, all that tech, and nothing. No monster.
Man, that's got to be rough for the Nessie believers out there.
You'd think it would be the final nail in the coffin, right? The BBC even made a big deal out of it. Nessie doesn't exist. But that's the thing with this whole mystery. It just won't quit.
Like we said, people want to believe. But if it's not some giant prehistoric holdover, then what are people seeing? Got any theories?
Oh, we've got theories. Remember those satches we were talking about earlier? Those underwater waves? Well, those can really mess with how things look down there. A log, a school of fish, even just changes in water temperature. A seisha can make them surface and disappear and surface again in a way that honestly looks kind of monstrous.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. You're out on the loch, you see this long, dark shape break the surface, disappear, pop up again.
Boom. Monster sighting. And then you've got that whole power of suggestion thing. We've all got these images in our heads, decades worth of Nessie lore. So we're primed to see a monster, even if it's just like a really big fish having a bad day.
So our brains are basically playing tricks on us. We see what we want to see, not necessarily what's actually there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know?
Yeah.
The more we talk about Nessie, the more likely we are to see her. Or at least something our brains interpret as her. But there's another layer to this too, something a bit deeper, I think. Even if we could prove, definitively, that every single sighting had a perfectly normal explanation, a part of us would still want to believe. It's human nature to be drawn to the unknown, to imagine creatures beyond our understanding.
Right, like what if? What if there are still things out there hidden in the deepest parts of the world that we haven't discovered yet?
Which brings us to the latest twist in the tale, the DNA analysis of Loch Ness.
Oh yeah, that was back in what, 2018? Scientists took water samples from all over the loch, hoping to find some traces of Nessie DNA. So what'd they find? Spill the tea.
Well, they found a lot of eel DNA, no plesiosaurs, no giant squid, nothing even remotely monstrous, really. Their theory was that maybe some sightings could be explained by unusually large eels, although they didn't actually find any evidence of eels big enough to be mistaken for, a Loch Ness Monster.
Okay, so giant eels. Not quite as exciting as a prehistoric sea monster, I guess. But still, it's something. But wait, didn't they also say that there was a bunch of DNA they couldn't even identify?
There you go. That's the thing about science. You think you're getting answers, and it just leads to more questions. They couldn't figure out about 25% of the DNA they found. Now, before you get any ideas, that doesn't automatically mean there's a monster swimming around in there. But it does show how much we still don't know about this place, this vast, deep, mysterious body of water.
So we may never know for sure if Nessie is real or not, but I think that's okay. Because what we have discovered through this deep dive is just as fascinating. The power of belief, the allure of the unknown, and the strange ways our own minds can deceive us.
We may not have definitive proof of a monster, but the legend of Nessie, it reminds us that there's still a sense of wonder out there, that there are still mysteries to solve.
Exactly.
Man.
And hey, who knows? Maybe somewhere down in those murky depths, something IS lurking. It might not be Nessie, but the possibility. Well, that's what keeps us coming back for more, isn't it?